Chapter 2, welcome back to my channel as we talk about my best-selling book, Addicted to Being Broke. Let's talk about eradicating the poverty mindset. My name is Agnes Wanja and we're going to get straight into it. Chapter 2, the consequences. This started off talking about cause and effect. So the reason or the cause was the lack of financial literacy, the lack of money management. And the effect was constantly in debt, constantly struggling, worrying, living in fear, anxiety. The list goes on. But that was an effect because of something. In the book, I write about, they say money does not buy happiness, but I say provides one of the means of happiness, which is paid bills and being able to know you can afford your life. So that was sort of a goal to reach, but at the time it seemed so far-fetched. The effect of struggling financially was also that need to constantly borrow money from companies, borrow money from family and friends, which was just not a way to live. Catalogues, my first experience with getting catalogues, or catalogue credit. So catalogues can give you credit where you can buy things from them, you'll get the items, but you'll pay off bit by bit. I think there's still a lot of catalogs around, but I think you got Klarna, ClearPay, those type of credit accounts where you can buy things from shops technically that you can't afford, because if you could, you'll just buy it off in one go. But you get this credit, and when I first got my first catalogue, I was so happy. I was like, oh my gosh, free money. And I was able to buy goods. I was able to buy things that I was obviously not able to afford. And it was fine at first because I had one catalogue and I ordered a few things and the monthly statement was like £12. I was like, yeah, I can afford that. I can pay that back. But then it's like another thing. And then the monthly payment has gone up. And then another catalogue, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely great. Now you've gone from having one £12 to having one £12 and one £33 and another £12. So you can see where this is going. £12, £33, £20, £22, different catalogues, different payments. What happens when you start to struggle? You miss a payment. What happens when you miss a payment? There's a late payment fee. Okay, so you were struggling to pay the fee that you were supposed to pay in the first place. Now it's gone up a bit because there's a late payment fee added on from last month. And it's starting to mount on now because now you've got last month's one to pay, this month's one plus the late fee. So if you can afford that small amount for last month, then how are you going to afford this one? And things just started to fall apart. Things just started to go left because it was one missed payment after another missed payment, late payments. And at this point, I didn't know much about your credit file and how late payments will impact your credit file. I didn't know much about that at this point. And to be honest, it didn't really mean anything to me. I didn't even have the realization that the reason why I got the catalogs at that point is because I had good credit. But by the time I finished with the catalogs, I did not have good credit. But as I said, I was just not aware of it at the time because I had no financial literacy. And the worst part about getting things on credit is feeling as though that you can keep up with people and feeling as though that you can get the things that you want to get when you want to get. But the reality is, it's really good to have credit. It's really good to have good credit. It's really good to have that as backup, but not as a way of living. So when I talk to young people now, when I do my workshops, I say to them, if you are faced with your option to buy your trainers on Klarna or ClearPay, things like that, try and just save up the same money you would pay every month towards it. Try and save up, only to avoid falling into that same problem that I had. Getting one and then getting another one, and then before you know it, it's all too much to keep up with. The interesting thing that I found is when I was struggling financially, it's like, you know, when it's like you're at work and you're like, yeah, I'm so broke. And everyone's like, yeah, me too, I can't wait till payday. But that's as far as it goes. You don't really get to tell someone, like, seriously, I'm really broke, like, I need help, like, this is not right, I'm struggling. You don't really get to have that conversation with anyone. And I feel like workplaces should really introduce that kind of help, because there's people struggling, but they struggle in silence, and they'll just come into work and they'll just do their job and go back home, but they're actually struggling and there's no one to talk to. But I think since then they have introduced like sort of like mental health counselors in work and things like that. So I hope if you are struggling that you have people to talk to about it, because that's one of the things I found when I was going through it. It was just no one you could really get into a deep conversation with, because everyone has got different definition of being broke. And it used to be so interesting because there were other people at work who would be like, oh, it was payday 2 days ago, wasn't it? Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize. And you're like, okay, I'm looking forward to the next payday, and you didn't even realize we got paid 2 days ago. So this is the differences in people's financial situation. You could be in the same family and there's different financial situations. And I talk about that in one of the chapters. I'm not sure which chapter is in, when I was talking to my family about my financial struggles. I will definitely include in whichever chapter it's in. The truth is, even though I was in a terrible situation, it didn't feel that bad, because a lot of people that I was around also struggled financially in some way. So I knew I had some debt, or I knew I was struggling with some finances and things like that. But I also knew other people who had bigger debt and bigger problems. So my problem didn't seem that bad. It was just like, yeah, you're struggling, but other people are doing worse. So you're not that bad. You're bad, but you're not that bad. But that's the pitfall, because if you benchmark yourself against people who are not doing great, okay, yeah, you're not doing that bad, but you're still doing bad if the benchmark is bad already. So taking yourself out of that circle and putting yourself in different rooms that can open up your eyes to different situations is one of the things that will help you to better your situation. And this could be your finances. It could be like you're trying to start a business. It could be with regards to employment. Just socializing with different people and different groups really does open up your eyes to different things that you might not see within your immediate circle. So I will do chapter 2 in 2 parts, because I just feel like it's a bit too long for one video. But the next part that I wrote about is being in rent arrears. So it got to the situation where I was in so much rent arrears I had to go to court. And even reading it back now, I just think, oh my gosh, Agnes, you went through a lot, didn't you? But I'm here, I'm talking about it, I've written about it, my life is better, but I've got to work through it. But I had to work through it and constantly keep working through it, because as I said before in the introduction, finances is one of those things that right now, yeah, you've got a stable job, you've got stable income, but if anything changes and that goes, then what do? You could easily end up in that same situation. I do talk about multiple sources of income in the book, so I'll discuss that in the relevant chapters. But the severeness of the issue can be really, really bad. And luckily, I was able to go to court and represent myself and manage to get a payment plan that was affordable to me. But there's been a lot of people who've not been that lucky. There's been a lot of people who've had to leave their houses. And it's not an easy thing, and it's not an ideal situation. But this is how bad the lack of money management can get. This is how important it is to get to a place where you know how to manage your money, because it's not just for now, it's not just for today, it's also for your future, and future-proofing yourself from that kind of situation, future-proofing yourself from the financial struggles that can come with just a simple thing like losing your job. And they do say there's a lot of people who are just one paycheck away from losing it all. And the journey is trying to not be one of those people, trying to have enough savings to get me through. And they say, oh, when the kids get older, it's much better. It's not really, because the truth is, if your children choose to stay on into further education, you still have to continue supporting them. You still have to help them out with a lot of things, which you wouldn't if they go into full-time employment straight from school. So if they when they get to 18, they go straight into employment, you wouldn't have to support them as much as you do if they decide to stay on further education and go to university. So you have to take that into consideration when you're doing your future planning for your finances, which I didn't because I was a young mom. So that's part 1 of chapter 2. I will continue chapter 2 on the next video. Thank you for watching. If you've got this far, please do leave a comment below. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, and put your notification on so you know when the videos have been released. And I will see you on my next video.